Sagamore recently reached out and invited us to visit their place up in Baltimore. I asked, can you do all access behind the scenes? Done. Can I talk to real people who are working in the distillery? Done. Can I ask some awkward questions?
Yo.
This is fancy.
Right?
You have your shoes off?
Yeah. That's what fancy people do, right?
Fancy people do that. Read the sign.
Oh shit. That's Sagamore.
Where is Sagamore?
Dude, it's right there.
Yeah. The first thing you got to do whenever you visit any distillery that's making their own stuff is you get in there and you see exactly what they're doing. So we went into the distillery with two guys that were there from the very beginning.
What are you doing, man?
I hate it so much. These are the guys that rolled the first barrels off the truck.
Morning.
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 Come on in.
That moment you realize the gift shop's bigger than your whole distillery.
My name's Ryan Norwood. I am the Vice President of Operations here at SAGAMORE Spirit.
What do you do here? Because I know a lot of people with fancy titles, they do nothing. What do you do?
Great question. It depends on the day. So what I do is I oversee all operations here at the distillery. So anything from hot side, which is cooking, fermentation, distillation, all the way through packaging, warehousing, and then our hospitality and events team as well.
Okay.
So nothing's off limits to ask. So I'm looking forward to some of your questions. But Brady, what are we making today? 95% rye, 5%
What's going on in
malted
this tank over here?
barley. In this one over here, this is what we call our beer well. So basically this is just a holding vessel. The whole cooking process starts over there at the cooker. We have a 6,000 gallon cooker right there. Yeah, so we're actively milling. What they're doing right now is adding grain to the cooker. So you see that tube conveyor up there? So that's literally loading in. Grain's getting dumped in right there. Exactly. From there, it goes into a 6,500 gallon fermenter where it spends 3 days. We do all open top fermentation. So like you actually get to come in here, see what's happening. Each of the fermenters will be at different stages. All fermentation is 3 days. And so what we're doing during that process is we're allowing that temperature to free rise from about 68 degrees Fahrenheit up to about 90, 92 is about the top end we go. Yeast are what we call facultative anaerobes. So what they do is they off-gas CO2. CO2 is heavier than air. That CO2 will lay on top of all of this and then form this anaerobic environment where then they are in their best mode to start fermenting and making alcohol. The main two byproducts of yeast are ethanol and CO2.
Yeah.
And so what you'll see in all of our tanks is we have these little CO2 vents over here. That just sucks the residual CO2 and then blows it out the back of the building. At this stage, it should be pretty sweet. As that pH starts to drop a little bit, you'll see that it'll become more sour. Yeah.
Dude. All right, dip your finger there.
So this one is a little bit farther along in the process. You can see the fermentation is a little bit more active at this stage. You can also put your hand over it and feel the heat. Like I said, there's no heat in these tanks at all. That is literally coming off of the yeast. Yep.
It's not just a little warm, it is.
No, it's very warm.
It looks like it's boiling,
Yep.
but that's not external heat. That's just the yeast, the
Yep.
fermentation.
Exactly.
These are the coils in case it gets too hot.
Yep. And so these coils inside of here just run cooling water through it. And like I said, we don't want to stop fermentation. We just don't want those yeasts to get too hot. Basically goes from 0% alcohol up to about 7.5, 8% alcohol. At that point, it's ready to be moved on the still. So we drop it into this tank. Rye tends to form this kind of heavy crust. You'll see it right here. Oftentimes we'll see it in fermentation. Sometimes that can be anywhere from like 10 to 18 inches deep. So like it is, we used to come in here in the mornings about 6 and like actually literally stir it up with a paddle to try to get it dropped down. So basically this is just, like I said, a holding and feeding tank for the still. Obviously this is Penny, our still. Like I said, it's 40 foot tall, 24 inch diameter. I actually got a picture from a friend. This was it being loaded into the building.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Casey Larkin sent me that. You also see our spirit safes. So this is distillate that's running off the still. This is running off the first doubler. And then this is running off the second doubler, which like I said, is about 135 proof. From there, it'll be ready to go over to the next building where we cut it down to 120 proof. Like I said, it's gonna be hot, but at this stage, a lot of the flavor that comes from the fermentation process is actually gonna come through in the distillate here. The still itself is gonna add a lot of flavor, but it's going to concentrate those flavors. At this stage, it should be kind of fruity. It's going to be pretty hot because, like I said, it's 135 proof.
Yeah.
But it should still have some really nice notes to it. It's like, oh, this is nothing then. At this stage, you're looking for some positive flavors, but you're mostly looking for like off flavors. You're looking for faults in it because a lot of faults won't age out and sometimes actually get worse in the barrel. So Penny is the world's largest mirror finished copper column still.
It makes it look like it's made out of gold.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. As many times as you tell people, don't touch it, it's hot. It's just like there's something about.
Oh, that's a full-on handprint right there.
Seriously, right?
Oh my God, it keeps going.
This is the base of our column still. And then you see our doublers behind here. So we have our doubler 1 to the left and doubler 2 to the right.
So why does this say 1909?
We have a farm about 30 minutes north of Baltimore City. And on that farm is a spring house that was built in 1909. A lot of this was paying homage to the farm, to this spring water that we actually go up at least once or twice a week to collect.
Yeah.
And we use that to cut all of our whiskey. And that spring house was built in 1909.
Welcome to our spring house.
Check it out.
That is so cool.
So you can actually see that water bubbling out of that ground.
Yeah.
So that's going through that aquifer, through that limestone. The water is a constant 52 degrees. This spring produces so much water, we only use about a day's worth of water it produces for an entire year to proof our whiskey. So we have a tradition here. All new teammates go through it, a lot of guests.
Although I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So one time I was at camp in 6th grade
Yes.
and I saw a creek. I forgot my water bottle. And the counselor, I was like, can I just drink out of the creek? And the counselor said, you can, but you're gonna have explosive diarrhea later.
Yeah.
And then I definitely may or may not have definitely had. Is that gonna happen here?
No, so the key is you don't want to drink standing water. And this is literally, I
Okay.
mean, it's feet away from where it's bubbling out of the ground. So
Right.
He's a professional. Oh my gosh, that is a push-up though, huh?
Oh, it's really good.
yeah, right?
Perfect. All right, so we were in Baltimore for this shoot. We're waiting in the lobby of the hotel, waiting for the pickup to start today. You look out the window. What did you see?
While we were sitting there, I saw a delivery driver wheeling out a Helix mattress box.
He had it on the dolly. He's bringing it into the building. And this is a building where there's people that are staying there as just hotel guests. There's also people that live there.
We're doing a good job.
Helix is everywhere.
So somebody in this building,
Is a genius, probably.
they know that if you want a premium mattress customized to fit your needs, conveniently shipped to your door, you're getting a Helix.
You're getting a Helix. It shows up to your door, rolled up in a box, in a burrito shape. All you have to do is pull it out of the box.
The way that you make sure you're gonna get the right Helix for you is they have a sleep quiz. In the sleep quiz, they're gonna be putting in things like your height, your weight, your preferences, like sleep position. I'm a side sleeper.
Side sleeper, front sleeper, back sleeper, upside down sleeper, legs off the bed sleeper, levitating sleeper because you're levitating because of all the farts. These are all questions that you need to answer for yourself. There's also a 100-night sleep trial. That's enough nights for people who are even as indecisive as myself.
You want to take advantage of a sleep trial like that because your mattress choice has a huge impact on so many different parts of your life. If you have a good night's sleep, then everything is better. You're well rested, you're in a better mood, you have more energy when you get a good night's sleep.
Yeah. Do you want to be a cloud of a person or do you want to be a teeter-totter of a person?
What?
Right?
I don't know which of those two is better.
I think the cloud. Although teeter-totters are pretty fun, but there's a lot of ups and downs. Also, they have very flexible financing options.
With those flexible financing options, you're gonna have something that's not only a good fit for your sleep preferences, it's also a good fit for your budget.
And a 10-year freaking warranty.
If you want to get a good night's sleep, you're going to try out Helix for yourself. You're going to go to helixsleep.com/whiskey, and you're going to get 20% off that mattress.
20% off.
Hey, we want to see more stuff.
All right, let's go see some stuff.
I'm a fan of a pot still. What do you got?
Edgar is his name.
Hi, friends.
This is what I'm familiar with. Pot still, what are we looking at here?
So this is a pot column hybrid. This is what we call Edgar. It is named after Edgar Allan Poe.
I knew it.
Yes, who actually spent time in Baltimore, and I believe is actually buried in Baltimore.
Right there.
Right underneath the still on that main system. I kind of like to break things down by numbers, but basically it is a 5 to 6 hour cook, 6,500 gallon fermentation. It takes about 8 hours to run on the still. That produces 15 barrels of whiskey. So when you're looking at like, hey, did this recipe work? Are we using a new grain? Do we want to try a new yeast strain? Anything like that? You don't really want to make 15 barrels of it. So we have Edgar over here. They take about 8 hours to run your first dripping run on the still, but this will produce a half a barrel of whiskey. And it allows us to try out some recipes, to try something different, to experiment. It's like our research and development. It's never apples to apples from here to the column still, as you guys know, but it'll tell you, hey, those flavors will work well together. You're heading in the right direction. It's worth stepping it up to the main one.
And then this is the moment when we realize that their experimental practice still is bigger than our main still. What are you doing, man?
I always have to be careful with that because like,
Yeah, cool.
but it's great. It's been really fun for us, and it's a great opportunity for even some of our new distillers to come in and work really hands-on. You know, it's very different than the other system you guys saw. Everything here is bags. We weigh everything out. We pre-mill it. They're dumping bags into the cooker. It's a little bit more of that manual old school way, which I appreciate.
Is this the first still that you guys started with?
The idea around Sagamore changed a lot in the early years. I think initially when they were first talking about doing it, it was like, oh, we're going to do a small 500-gallon still, pot still.
Yeah.
We're going to do it in a garage. And then it was like, well, maybe we'll move it over here. I think it changed sites 3 or 4 times. And then it became what we saw over there with the 40-foot tall, over 5 acres. So it changed quite a bit. And then this was added on. Any interest in seeing the lab or anything?
A little foreshadowing. There's going to be something in the lab that's bigger than our main stuff. I'm going to get pissed off.
The lab actually is pretty small.
Again, don't say that because it's going to be bigger. What?
It's all relative. It's all relative. This is where we do a lot of the just physical attribute testing of the whiskey. So in here, we're looking at our pH. We're looking at temperature. We have a densitometer over here that's actually going to measure the amount of alcohol that's in our spirit. We also have our alkalizer here that's going to measure the amount of alcohol and sugar that's in our fermentation process. The tough thing with fermentation is a lot of times it's lagging indicator. By the time you find out something is wrong with your fermentation, you've got 2 or 3 tanks behind it that could possibly have that same issue. So what you'll see over here is our little sensory boots. We sit down and we taste. We try to not be very narrow-minded and only work with operations. So we try to bring in our hospitality team, our marketing team, and get them a part of that sensory program because we know that like we want other people's opinions. We want other people's thoughts outside of just operations.
Yeah.
Sometimes what I've found working in breweries and distilleries is like oftentimes what the operations team likes doesn't always resonate with the customer. And so we want to try to branch out a little bit. We track all of our sensory profiles and we can actually tag it to individual barrels on every batch. And every single batch then goes into the warehouse where we measure temperature, humidity. We look at where it's aged inside of that. We tie that into our sensory data as well. And hopefully that'll give us a good feel of what are we working with? How do we make the best whiskey? What blends are we bringing together? And how do we look at future products? And so we do a full sensory analysis and quality analysis on all the grain that comes in. And so what we do is we grab samples throughout the truck. We grab about 6 samples. We bring that in here. We'll actually put it into the microwave to warm it up. What that will do is it'll bring out any like oils or gases that could be in it. It'll help bring out any flavors, off flavors that we don't want in the grain, because literally all it takes is 1 clump of bad grain within a 50,000 pound truck to ruin multiple batches of whiskey.
The microwave tip.
Yeah, that's really great. Larry Ebersold, who trained us, said you have to do it this way. 20 seconds. You don't want to cook it. As soon as you open it up, you'll get so much more out of it from an aroma standpoint.
That's what Snoop Dogg does with his blunts.
It warms them up in the microwave?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So when we got into this whole thing, I think we were a little naive and we thought farmers were going to be lining up.
Yeah.
To grow grain for us. Yeah, little did we know. And so we're like, all right, cool, we're going to do this thing. We're going to get Maryland farmers involved and they're going to love it. You know, farming's tough. It'll be a local product. And then that just didn't happen because there's no subsidies. So there's no incentive for people to grow rye versus corn. There's lots of subsidies to offset the cost to keep that price of corn low. You know, kind of what we had to do is kind of look for ways to mitigate the farmers' risks. So we buy all the seed up front. for that farmer so we can take away that price. And the other thing we do is we guarantee the price, so we give them a very fair price regardless of the yield of that harvest. So that way they know if they have a bad crop, they have a bad year, they're still going to get a really good price from us on it. They're pretty exciting about it. These are family farms. They've been in generations to generation. One of the farms, Carroll Farm, actually goes back to one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. And it's been in that family for hundreds of years. And they like knowing that their grain, their rye that they're growing is going into Sagamore whiskey, and it's going all around the world. And they take a lot of pride in that.
What do you think?
That's pretty magnificent.
I don't think we went through that nearly fast enough.
No, we didn't go. Definitely did not.
All
go
right,
that
yeah.
fast
This
enough.
once more through the creek, way faster.
It's fun, but really the primary purpose is the gator gets a little dusty,
Yeah.
and it's just our responsibility to return it as clean as possible.
So is this where all the bottling happens?
Every single bottle of Sagamore that has ever been produced has been made on this line. It is a very manual line. You'll see everything is hands-on. We have quality checks throughout the entire process. So we get all of our bulk glass palletized. That glass gets taken out and gets blown out with air to make sure that there's no dust or any particles that are inside the glass. From there, it runs into a 6-head filler that fills 6 bottles in about 15 seconds. Probably one of the fastest things on the line. From there, it goes into a corker. Each cork is hand put in and individually corked. And then at that point, we do an inspection. We make sure that there's no floaties in there, there's no cork residue or anything like that. And then we put a shrink sleeve on the top of it. That'll run through a steam tunnel and then an air dryer. And then from there, it'll go into a labeler where every single label is put on from that labeler there. Comes down here, throws into a box, goes onto a pallet, and is ready to go out to the market. Pete? What's up, dude? How are you, buddy? Good to see you. Doctor, how we doing? How the barrel's going?
Hey. This magnificent bastard right here fills every single one of these Sagamore
Whatever you
barrels.
guys need. So, yeah.
It's the guy. So you guys are just thoroughly elbow deep in making your own spirit at this point.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I have some awkward questions for you.
Ask away.
This guy right here, Brianna, he rolled the first barrels off the truck.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yep. I have pictures.
This is OG Sagamore
Yep,
right here.
yep, for
so
sure.
this place has come a long way.
Yes, it really has.
You wanted to, from the beginning, do a Maryland style rye.
Yes.
I'm gonna tell you right now, outside of Maryland, nobody cares.
No, for
So
sure,
what
yeah.
was it about Maryland that you guys thought, you know what, we're gonna plant a flag here, we're gonna make some damn good whiskey because Maryland. But everybody else is like, who?
Exactly.
What are we doing?
It's been a challenge. To your point, like when you go outside the Mid-Atlantic, people are going, why do I care about Maryland?
Right.
And it was one of the things that a lot of people don't know about is Maryland actually has a very rich tradition in distilling rye whiskey. Some of the first immigrants that came over from Europe, from Ireland, from Scotland, actually came through Maryland and brought a lot of their traditions with them and started distilling here in the state of Maryland, as well as Pennsylvania. And what they found was that barley does not grow as well here as it does in Ireland or Scotland, and rye grew really well. So they started making rye whiskey. And so a lot of people don't know that was actually happening in Maryland before Kentucky was even a state. And so a lot of these families, like the Beam family, the Willett family, actually started in Maryland.
Okay, so I have heard this, that rye precedes bourbon.
Yes, correct.
And you're saying not only does it precede bourbon, this is where rye preceded bourbon.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
interesting. Yeah.
And so at one point in the early 1900s, Maryland had 44 distilleries in the state of Maryland.
Yeah.
21 that were in downtown Baltimore.
So at Sagamore, you guys started out sourcing. Now you're not.
Yes.
There's a lot of landmines in this process. There's a lot of things that if you don't communicate it well, you're gonna piss people off.
Yeah.
How do you make that transition?
It's one thing that we've been very transparent about from the beginning was we knew we wanted to make only rye whiskey. We didn't want to come out with a vodka or gin. So the way to do that while you're building a distillery is to contract distill. So we worked with MGP in the start, actually started buying whiskey from them in 2013. And when we built this distillery that you're at now in 2017, we stopped buying all contract distillations. And so we knew that it was going to take time. And there's kind of two schools of thought around transitioning from contract distillation into your own product.
Yeah.
There's the light switch where you basically say, that was them, this is us.
Okay. the light switch? I don't ever see that working out well.
No, I don't either. We agreed. And that's kind of where transparency has worked for us, is because as long as you are open and honest about what you're doing and you bring your consumers along with you, then they understand. And the hope is that transition is better flavors. You know, we run on a smaller batch. We have all open top fermentation. So to your point, it is going to be different. Starting in the beginning, we were 100% MGP. Then slowly, as our whiskey got older in age, we were able to add more of that to the overall blend. We started out at about 10% of our whiskey, 90% theirs, and we slowly built that up until we were about 75% our whiskey, 25% MGP.
Okay.
And then about 3 months ago, we transitioned our flagship small batch rye whiskey to 100% made by Sagamore. Sometimes the first instinct when you talk to the average consumer is, I don't like rye. It's harsh. It's not my style of whiskey.
Yeah.
What I always challenge them is try Sagamore, try a Maryland style, because it isn't as harsh. It's not as spice forward.
So why is that? Because you could say, oh, it's easier to drink, and just drink it, hopefully you like it. What is it about the making of the thing that you say is going to be more sweet, less spicy?
And historically, it was a little bit on the sweeter side, but that was probably because they were putting juices in the whiskey or rock candy or things that we are not legally allowed to do now and call ourselves
bottled and boxed.
Exactly. But one of the ways we achieve that is by having 2 different mash bills.
Okay.
We cook those, ferment them, distill them, and age them completely separately. And then on the back end, we blend them together to that flavor profile that's going to add a little bit of sweetness from the corn, but it's still gonna have that rye backbone that brings on a lot of nice baking spice. It's resonating with the right people, and that was always a challenge for us, is how do we get people into rye whiskey?
Yeah.
And the initial thought was, can you get them from IPAs, drinking beer? Not really. Can you get them from drinking vodka or gin? Not really. You're gonna get those bourbon drinkers, the drinkers that are saying, I love bourbon, I've tried a lot of bourbons, I'm looking for a little bit more, I'm looking for more complexity, more body. This small batch rye really hits that mark. And our tag and our motto is put Maryland back on the map for making great rye whiskey.
We're looking at the small batch. This is the stuff that you guys are now making 100%.
Maryland made. We always like to say we're kind of the bourbon drinkers rye. We're a great rye for those folks that prefer a little bit sweetness, but don't want that big, bold spiciness.
The fruitiness on this is that apple. Again, I mean, if you guys are trying to be attractive to bourbon drinkers that want to go exploring.
Nothing was more fun than going to bourbon drinkers, that said, I don't like rye, and go, try this. And you see the expression on their face, they're like, oh, wow, I think I like rye. No, you like our rye. You like our Maryland style rye. That doesn't mean you like rye, so slow down.
Small batch is 85% of the high rye and 15% of the low rye. This is the entry, and then you go into the double oak and to the cask strength, where then you can kind of lean into the actual rye drinkers that are out there looking for that rye, that bold spice, that in-your-face kind of rye profile.
Because, it came because you guys were in this moment of transition that I've always been very curious about. The fact that you guys are making this, I think job well done.
Yeah.
I think it turned out great.
Yeah, it's been a pretty amazing journey. I mean, from when Ryan and I started, even in terms of the marketing campaigns. So when we launched, we couldn't really lean in too heavy on Maryland rye whiskey because
it wasn't.
It's not.
Yeah.
So, we leaned in on horse racing a little bit. And the water comes from Sagamore Farm that has history in thoroughbred horse racing. And horse racing and whiskey go together. And then we've evolved over time, and we're really hitting our stride. Again, pun intended, with that.
All right, this is over. We're done.
So this is Sagamore Farm. It actually dates back to Charles I, King of England. So this whole valley here is called Worthington Valley. It eventually wound up with a gentleman named Alfred Vanderbilt, who turned it into a world-renowned thoroughbred horse racing farm.
That's the Clockers Tower. So originally, the trainers would stand up on the balcony and they would time the horses as they would run along the furlong. The historic indoor track.
Yeah.
It's one of 3 or 4 left in the country along the East Coast.
About 4 years ago, we switched over from thoroughbred horse racing to growing our own grain. So this farm is really the heart of our grain to glass program.
So of course you can't visit a distillery without finding some way into the barrel house. And this barrel house is absolutely beautiful. It feels like the idealized version of a barrel house. It's picturesque, it smells beautiful, it's well maintained. Everything that they do at Sagamore is executed at a very high level, but it's almost too beautiful. And Sagamore, you guys are releasing more spirit than what you can just do in here.
Yeah, so this is kind of our show barn, fits 2,200 barrels, but you know, our mission is to inspire global passion for Maryland rye whiskey, and you're not going to do it with 2,200 barrels.
Yeah.
So we have two more in Baltimore, one that fits 20,000, the other one fits around 40,000.
Okay.
And we have room for one more that can do another 40,000. So when you think of scale, we can scale.
Yeah.
we can scale up, which honestly was a bit of a concern for a lot of folks in the beginning. We had to show those 9 6,500 gallon fermentation tanks, and they go, okay.
This has some runway,
Yeah, this has some runway, and we see where you guys are going, and we want to get on board with the journey.
Oh, you got it. Nice. One thing stood out to me about visiting Sagamore. They're very candid. Every step along the way, whenever I would ask kind of an awkward question, they met it gladly. And that kind of passion for the spirit that they're making, reawakening this idea of a Maryland-style rye. That kind of transparency, combined with a team of people that are executing at a very, very high level, you can only win. The small batch that they've been working on that is now 100% Maryland-style rye. They called the shot years ago. They've been transparent along the way. They're finally making that transition. And to have a gateway spirit for bourbon lovers to get into rye, I think that's exactly what they ended up putting in a bottle. At this point, I probably smell real bad. It's been a long, hot day. So I don't want to hear your nosing of this, you guys. We enjoyed the trip, lovely people, really impressive facilities there. But of course, soon the mood shifts into what it should be whenever you're gathering around some whiskey. Good spirits and good company. Forgetting about the bottle, just enjoying the rest of the day.
We'll do our barrel picks up here as well.
Next time I'm wearing shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to be professional for you guys, but
Again, I don't think you've seen the Guys, thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, our pleasure. Thanks for making the trip.
you.
Cheers.
I'm going to overlook the plastic cup.